Hello everyone, welcome back to Vanchika's classes. Today we are going to talk about tissues. But before moving further, first please make sure that you have subscribed to my channel and like this video if you find my videos helpful. Before watching this video, first watch that video which was about the cell in order to understand this topic better, because this video is basically the second part of that video. So let's get started. This is the classification of tissues. Tissues are of two types. First is plant tissue and the second one is animal tissue. Plant tissues are divided into two types. First is meristematic tissues and the second is the permanent tissues. Meristematic tissues are basically of three types. First is the apical meristematic tissue, second is the intercalary meristematic tissue, and the third one is the lateral meristematic tissues. Permanent tissues are of two types, simple permanent tissue and complex permanent tissue. Simple permanent tissues are of three types. First is Parenchyma, second is Sclerenchyma, and the third is the Sclerenchyma. Complex permanent tissues are of two types. First is Xylem and second one is Phloem. Next is the classification of animal tissues. Animal tissues are of four types. First is epithelial tissues, second is muscular tissue, third one is connective tissue, and the fourth one is nervous tissue. Epithelial tissues are of five types. First is squamous, then cuboidal, columnar, ciliated, and glandular. Muscular tissue is of three types. First is striated, second is unstriated, and the third one is cardiac. Connective tissues. Connective tissues are of three types. First is proper connective tissues, second is skeletal connective tissues, and third is the fluid connective tissues. In this video, we will discuss only about plant tissues, and in the next part, in the next video, we will continue to the animal tissues. What is a tissue? When a group of cells combine together in order to perform a particular function, then that group is called as tissue. Tissues are of two types. First is plant tissue, second is animal tissues. Plant tissues. Plant tissues are made up of similar type of cells, and these cells possess cell walls. So due to the presence of cell walls, these are rigid. These tissues are rigid. Animal tissues. Animal tissues are made up of animal cells obviously, and due to the lack of cell wall, these are not rigid, these are non-rigid tissues. Types of plant tissues. First type of plant tissues are meristematic tissues. These tissues are primarily made up of rapidly dividing cells, and these are the growing tissues of plants, and the metabolic rate is very high inside these tissues. These tissues have the ability to divide throughout the life of a plant, and the cells inside this tissue are young and immature. These tissues, cells of these tissues possess a single large prominent nucleus, and the cells are devoid of large vacuole. Large vacuoles are absent. If present, small vacuoles are present. These cells do not have intercellular space. The cells are combined congestedly to form this tissue. This word meristem. Meristem is the zone where these cells, meristematic cells, are present, and this term was coined by Carl Wilhelm von Nageli. This term was coined by Carl Wilhelm von Nageli. These cells help to increase the girth of a plant. This is very important point. Which cells increase the girth of a plant? Meristematic cells. Girth is like the width, like in humans it is waist. These tissues are thin walled and are living tissues. These are not dead, these are living tissues. Protoplasm of these cells is very dense, and these tissues help to heal the wound of an injured plant. Meristematic tissues are divided further. First, on the basis of origin. On the basis of origin, these are of three types. First is Promeristem, second is primary meristem, and the third one is secondary meristem. Promeristem forms from the embryo, and promeristem gives rise to primary meristem. Further, primary meristem gives rise to the secondary meristem, and the secondary meristem forms the permanent tissues. These are the characteristics of each one of them. Promeristem. Promeristem is the earliest and the youngest meristematic tissue. It originates from the embryo, and primary meristem arise from the promeristem. Promeristem forms the primary meristem. These are present on promeristem tissues are present on the tips of root and the shoot. Primary meristem. Primary meristem originates from the promeristem, and these cells of the primary meristem divides actively, and primary meristem can be found below the promeristem and forms the permanent tissues. Secondary meristem. Secondary meristem originates from primary meristem, and it gives rise to the permanent tissues. It forms the permanent tissues. Types of meristematic tissues on the basis of position. On the basis of position, meristematic tissues are of three types: apical meristematic tissues, intercalary meristematic tissues, and lateral meristematic tissues. First is apical meristematic tissues. These are present at the tips of root and the shoot. These tissues help to increase the height of a plant. And apical tissues is further divided into two types. First is promeristem zone, second is meristematic zone. The promeristem zone contains actively dividing cells, and meristematic zone contains the protoderm, procambium, and ground meristem. We will discuss about this also later in this video. Second is intercalary meristem. Intercalary meristem is present in the leaves and internodes at intercalary position. It helps to increase the length of internodes, thus it adds to the height of plant. It is a part of apical meristem and adds to the height of a plant. Third is the lateral meristem. It is present in stems and roots at the lateral side, and it helps to increase the thickness of the plant. Example of this lateral meristematic tissues are vascular cambium and cork cambium. This lateral meristematic tissues divide periclinally or radially and forms the secondary permanent tissues. Next is the classification of meristematic tissues on the basis of function. It is of three types on the basis of function. The first one is protoderm, second is the procambium, and the third one is the ground meristem. First is the protoderm. This protoderm is the outermost tissue and it gives rise to the epidermal layer. And it protects the plant from all the types of mechanical shocks. Next is the procambium. Procambium is the innermost tissue and it gives rise to the xylem and phloem, and hence it helps in the transport of water and nutrients throughout the plant. The last is the ground meristem. The cells of this tissue are large and have the thick cell walls. It forms the cortex, pericycle, and pith. This was all about the classification of meristematic tissues. Permanent tissues. Permanent tissues are of two types. First is the simple permanent tissues and the second one is complex permanent tissues. First we will study about the simple permanent tissues, then we will come to the complex ones. Simple permanent tissues. These are also known as the homogeneous tissues. These are made up of single type of cells and usually with the same origin, structure and the function. Simple permanent tissues are further divided into three types. First is the parenchyma, second is the collenchyma, and the third one is the sclerenchyma. The first one is the parenchyma. The parenchymatic cells have oval or round shape. The cell walls of these cells are made up of cellulose or hemicellulose, and these cells have very thin walls. The protoplasm of these cells is living and very dense. These cells have vacuoles and the nucleus present inside these cells is very small. Parenchymatic cells can be found in every part of the plant. Next one is the collenchyma. Collenchymatic cells are elongated in shape and the cell wall of this tissue is made up of cellulose and pectin, and due to the presence of pectin, this is the only type of tissue with highest retractive index. Collenchymatic cells have thin cell walls. Collenchymatic cells also have less chloroplast, and these cells do not have any intercellular spaces between them. These type of cells can be found in epidermis and vascular bundle of dicot leaf. The last one is the sclerenchyma. Sclerenchyma cells have various sizes and shapes, and this is the dead tissue. The collenchyma and parenchyma were living in nature, and this is dead. This tissue is very hard and rigid in nature, and this helps in providing the mechanical support and rigidity to the plant. And these cells have very thick walls, and the walls of these cells contain lignin. Due to the presence of lignin, these are hard and rigid. The next subtopic is complex permanent tissues. These tissues are of two types. First is xylem tissue, second is phloem. Xylem. Xylem transports water and nutrients from the roots to the leaves. It also provides support to the plant. This xylem tissue has four parts, which are tracheids, vessels, xylem fibers, and xylem parenchyma. Among these four parts, these three parts, that is tracheids, vessels, and xylem fibers, are dead in nature, and xylem parenchyma is living. Next is the phloem. Phloem is also known as bast. Phloem translocates the prepared organic food from the leaves to the other parts of the plant. This phloem also has four parts, which are sieve tubes, companion cells, phloem fibers, and phloem parenchyma. Among these four tissues, only one is dead in nature, which is phloem fibers, and other three are living in nature. This was all about permanent tissues. Now we will discuss some specialized type of tissues. Specialized tissues. First is the latissiferous tissues. Latissiferous tissues have latex inside their cells, and the cell wall of these cells is very thin. These cells are elongated in shape and possess multiple number of nuclei. The latissiferous tissue originate from the meristematic tissue and matures with the other type of tissues. This type of tissue can be found in families such as Euphorbiaceae, Apocynaceae, and Compositae, etc. Second one is the glandular tissue. These tissues possess various glands that secrete oils, tannins, mucilages, resins, etc. And these glands which are present in glandular tissues are situated on the epidermis, on the epidermal layer. So this was all about the topic tissues, and if you still have any query or question related to this topic or any other topic related to my videos, then you can simply comment down. And please, if you like this video, then please click on the like button down here, and thank you for watching this video.